Hello, hello. This is Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces, and it's time to talk about this first new moon eclipse in Libra. Let's dive in. So this is the event that we have been waiting for since Libra season began. We have known that this eclipse is imminent. And this eclipse comes amidst a series of other potent shifts. So let's break those down. So this eclipse happens on Saturday, the 14th. And on Tuesday, the 10th, we have the sun opposite Chiron, and we have Pluto stationing direct. Now, contrary to popular belief, this is not Pluto's final descent into Capricorn. That will happen next year at the last degree of Capricorn, 29 degrees. So next spring will prove to be a very potent time as Pluto backtracks over this final critical degree one more time. For now, we have Pluto stationing at 27 degrees, and Pluto will be in the orb of a square from this new moon eclipse taking place in Libra. It's at 21 degrees, but that means that within hours of this eclipse, that moon will be in that square to Pluto. So that's going to be a pretty important story to us. The next day, Wednesday the 11th, is when we have Mars finally entering its home of Scorpio for the first time since Halloween 2021. Okay, so think back to that time, think back to kind of the end of the year of 2021, thinking about Mars being in Scorpio for all of November and about half of December there, right there at the end of the year. And we can kind of think about what sort of things were happening at that time, what we were getting into, what we were feeling and emoting and strategizing. And we can think about how Mars returning here 2 years later is a renewal of that cycle in some way. Wednesday is also a day of a deep void of course moon. That means that the moon has no appointments with other planets. So the moon moving through Virgo, that dark moon period just before it enters Libra and becomes new, is where the moon is quite silent. There's no aspects happening between the moon and other planets after it trines Jupiter in Taurus from Virgo. And so there's almost a calm before the storm that takes place in those days leading up to Saturday. On Friday the 13th, we have Mars at home in Scorpio, making a trine to Saturn at 0 degrees of Pisces, where it is due to station imminently. Having Mars and Saturn, classically in traditional astrology, the malefic planets, trine is a very interesting vibe leading up to a Venusian eclipse. There's something here about protection is something that I've been downloading at this time, sort of strategizing on how to protect the self as we go into this lunation. Mars in Scorpio is quite a protective sign, right? The scorpion itself being quite protective. And Saturn and Pisces being a bit more open, a bit more flowing, but also bringing some energy of restriction. So there is maybe an armor taking place, some sort of contraption metaphysically, spiritually, emotionally, logically that we are constructing at this time. So we know that eclipses take place where the nodal axis is. So on the day of this new moon eclipse, we have the moon hitting the south node at 24 degrees, just after it becomes new. So there's clearly some portal being opened around what is sort of dropping out of existence in order to make space for what needs to come through. On the same day, Mercury opposes Chiron. So I mentioned that on Tuesday, the sun opposes Chiron. We then have Mercury opposite Chiron at this new moon eclipse. And those two planets will meet the week after the eclipse at 26 degrees on Wednesday. And so there is something that has been opened up before the eclipse that then sort of anchors or becomes known, categorized, right? Thinking about Mercury in the eclipse itself. And when the sun and Mercury meet up the following week, there's something that might be integrated, that might be finalized. And so this eclipse, we know eclipses sort of open up portals that take months. But there's also maybe even some days after the eclipse where we see things start to shake out in some way. And I mentioned that this lunation will square Pluto, and that's the final aspect of this moon. So for us on the West Coast, that'll happen right on midnight on Sunday. For everyone else, that will happen on the same day as this eclipse. And so there is absolutely something being riled up, something where we are hoping to break free from something. Pluto having just stationed direct, Pluto revealing more to us about where we've given power away, where we are sort of beholden to energies that are not suited for us, that we need to become aware of in order to change. And so there is a big recipe for change, transformation, evolution at this lunation, but it will absolutely be surprising, shocking, eruptive, disruptive, right? This is not a quiet announcement. This is something really proclaiming itself here. Now, you may recall we had a new moon eclipse in Aries at 29 degrees back in April, much before the nodes had even shifted into the Aries-Libra axis. So we got a little preview back then of what was coming up in the nodal journey that we've now entered. And so you might want to think back to that period back in April, back to that 29 degree, right? The final day of Aries season, right before we stepped into Taurus season. You might want to think back to that time and maybe see if there are any connections to what was opened up in that portal that now takes a new shape in this Libra new moon. That new moon was at 29 degrees, this one's at 21 degrees, so they are nearly opposite. And there's absolutely some sort of reflection back toward what we opened then that we maybe did not know much about at the time that has now evolved into something bigger. Okay, so this is some wild new ride that we are just getting to see, just getting to know. We will not know what's coming in at this eclipse, and that's some of the magic as well as some of the disruptive nature of those eclipses. Somewhat like Uranus, where we need some sort of outside, distant to us event to occur in order to jolt us out of something that may be a pattern at this point in our lives. We can't predict what's going to come up. So, we're going to do our best to remain grounded, to remain non-reactive. Really tricky when we're thinking about Mars and Scorpio, when we're thinking about a square to Pluto, when we're thinking about Mercury opposite Chiron. So we're going to go ahead and pull some cards, see what kind of themes we're navigating at this time, and get a sense of what we can focus on while this sort of deep change starts to unfold around us. All right, so we're going to pull an entirely new spread, and I will see you in just a moment. Okay, here we go. So I always give this little tip. If you'd like to pull along for yourself, you can head to the description of this video, and I have made a special PDF of this eclipse pull for anyone who wants to join. The questions we'll be asking today, we'll be checking in about an imbalance that is evident now. And we'll ask about our attachment or our connection to this imbalance. We've been living with this imbalance for some time, which means that we're somehow connected or bound or attached to it in some way. And if the imbalance has to change, then we must also find our connection to that and be willing to change it as well. We'll be asking how to ground or where to focus as this imbalance is released now. And we'll ask about what this release may look like. Lastly, we'll get an idea of what can grow or be addressed in its place. So as this imbalance is released, what's able to grow or otherwise be addressed in its place? It being a new moon, we like to think about things growing as we clear out space, but it may be that as this is kind of the beginning of this nodal axis lunation eclipse journey, right? This is our first Libra eclipse on this axis. So there might be more underneath it that needs space to surface. We like to be hopeful and think that, okay, I cleared out that one thing and something can grow here now. And maybe that is absolutely what's happening and possible for you at this time. But I'm gonna go ahead and guess that many of us have a few layers of Libra imbalances. And it might be that there's one that is the most pressing at this time that needs to surface and be cleared away, so that other imbalances kind of ranked beneath it may have their turn as well. So we're wrapping that into our query. Okay. All right. An imbalance that is evident now. How Libra of us. Okay, well, quite literally, our relationships are revealing some sort of imbalance. Absolutely. We've seen the Two of Cups show up in our previous lunation cycle, right? I want to say it was our Virgo new moon cycle. And we were having some sword activity take place. We were kind of breaking out of some new, or some old rather, ideas. And I think that had a lot to do with the retrogrades and the shadows that we had to wrap up. And let's remember that right before Venus entered Virgo on Sunday, Venus cleared its retrograde shadow. So we are just now in the clear. Mercury cleared that shadow a little bit ago, but let's remember that we're still just out of the fog on Venus. So we had the Two of Cups show up there as a way to ground some new intentions around the Virgo new moon. And so it may have been that we were recognizing then how we wanted our relationships to feel, what kind of connections we wanted to be seeking out or restoring if they were once established and now lost. And so we had the Two of Cups showing up as kind of a go ahead and start making those connections, again, as a means to ground some intentions. On a bigger scale, we're absolutely kind of zooming out and thinking about where our longer standing relationship dynamics are imbalanced, right? As I said before, we've got a few layers of Libra to pull back on, and it's time for something that has been established to be shaken up right now. So this could even be, I've entered some new relationships or I've made some new connections, but I'm feeling some old Libra traits show up in how I am navigating this current dynamic. And if we've restored some relationships that were once established that were then lost, we might be feeling like, oh, I'm relating to you in this old way or from this old place that is revealing to me some sort of imbalance that I'm connected to. And so, all right, my connection to, what's our connection to this imbalance? Interesting. Maybe we think that other people give us access to our own magic in some way. And there's whatever old is coming up, whether it's in long-standing relationships or renewed relationships or newly established relationships, something old beneath them is imbalanced, right? So maybe part of that imbalance is what we think these connections mean to us, what we think these connections make available to us, what we think these connections give us. And let's hone in on that, because that does feel very Libra. If we think about Libra traits in relationships and how we relate to others, it's because both parties need something. Both parties need access to something. That's often where we think about how Libra goes into Scorpio. Scorpio is the access, right? Scorpio is the emotional, watery bond that becomes really messy and hard to detach. But to get there, we start in Libra. And so I'm getting this sense that, because the page is just a beginning, the page is not like a completion by any means, but we might feel like how we approach relationships in general is founded upon some idea that only through those relationships can we access something within ourselves, some possibility, some creativity, some idea. And that is very true. Scorpio, again, is where our resources become merged. And it is true that many of our dealings require access to something outside of us that we don't typically have. And relationships do serve that purpose to an extent. But in Libra, which is what we need to be mindful of, the Libra side of things, we may be socially agreeing to things in Libra that don't actually give us this access that we think we get. I know I'm getting real deep here, but we are establishing something imbalanced has to go. And if we're bringing imbalance into our relationships, thinking that that's the only way we're going to tap into our own magic, we need to get clear on where that is true and where that is false. That is certainly true in some means, again, but if we're approaching all of our bonds through something that is only true some of the time, that's creating imbalance for us. Whew, okay. I'm gonna drink some water, y'all. Okay, it's getting real in this eclipse bowl. So how do we ground, or where do we focus as this imbalance is released, right? We probably don't need to do anything for that to be released. Nice. Okay. So where we are hung up is on like an initiation. Only with this bond or this person can I access the magic to create this thing that I need. And that is where I'm approaching these bonds from. Well, let's return to the vision then for a moment. Let's return to the role we play when we are actually leading others toward their vision. This might feel like a zooming out, and maybe that is something that we need at this time. Let's think about, like, I'm getting real Sagittarius vibes here, and let's remember that Jupiter is the other body under Venus's rule at this time. So all of the Libra activity going on is being Venus ruled. Jupiter in Taurus is being Venus ruled, and Jupiter is still in charge of that Sagittarian material in our chart, wherever it may be. Whatever that sort of bigger picture vision, that bigger picture ideology that we have, that we possess, that we tap into, that we guide others toward, we are the ones who possess this. And where we think that we need these kind of mannerisms in our relationships, in order to get the fire going, we actually already fully contain something big and complete within us. Oof, okay. So this is how we're grounding. This is what we're focusing on. We're focusing on our big picture goals. We're focusing on what lights us up, what we tap into innately with the universe, what we channel, what our unique vision is, how we share that with others. right? Not others here in the Two of Cups, but others on this broader communal, not global, but we'll stick with community. There we go. Community level. There we go. I like that. What this release may look like. Ooh, okay. We definitely had strength show up for us recently as well. And it was kind of showing up alongside the Chariot. And it's nice to think about this prefacing what will be a strength year next year, 2024. So what this release may look like, we're already starting to feel some of the themes of next year enter for us now, which makes sense. It's October. We're feeling our instincts evolve, right? We're feeling whatever's being brought up here on this Libra surface level, this mental level, right? Air sign, whatever's being brought up there, we're focusing on, we might be fixating on, we might be obsessing over and feeling triggered by, and really unsure of how to move through that. But on a much deeper level, we're tapping into our gut, our sacral, like fire space, okay? And so I like seeing this line of fire here in the middle. We're tapping into what is so much deeper than the surface level. Pluto stationing direct and being a big part of the entire lunation cycle that opens with Libra. All of the moons are going to do something with Pluto over the course of the next several weeks, so stay tuned. But we are going to feel, and it's funny to think about what the release may look like because we might not see it. We're gonna feel it, and maybe we see it in how it shows up in our actions. Our thoughts are preoccupied with these patterns and why we are relating this way and the imbalance that that's created. Beneath that, we're tapping into something deeper and stronger, right? And we're developing those muscles. So we are saying there is fire within me. There is something bigger than me that I am connected to, that I can focus on and ground into now. And yes, this sort of crisis might be happening interpersonally, but beneath that, I am driven by, and maybe the release looks like us understanding what's actually driving us beneath this current, again, surface level. It's still like, I don't mean like this is only just this is simple. It's not simple. It's connected to something deeper, right? These are patterns that are connected to instincts. Ahem. So instincts being reframed here in strength. This is us saying, okay, I understand what's happening here. I have been able to zoom out some and I can understand why these patterns might exist this way. And here I am learning to depend on my own instincts and to listen to what those are and to heed the feelings beneath the crisis and to understand them and to bring them to the table, to be in balance with them, right? Haha, I love it. All right. What can grow or be addressed in its place, in the place of this imbalance? Okay, so we are definitely looking at a Mars and Scorpio time, all right? This certainly means that yes, what I said is correct, that maybe something's not growing here just yet because there are more layers beneath this initial one being brought up now that need to be transformed. I love seeing these cards together. This tells me that we are going to go through this, and it's because we're tapping into this. Okay, so don't fear this death card. Don't fear these asteroids that look like they will completely decimate us. We are going to float through them. We're going to feel Mars move through Scorpio. We're going to feel our deeper instincts being tended to, being observed, being realigned, right? And we're going to absolutely address what else needs to be broken down within us. Eclipse season has only just begun. We're going to see more at the Taurus full moon eclipse, that final one. So I expect this to be quite a juicy story that we're opening up here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would love to hear how this is landing for you in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please like it, share, and subscribe. Come back next week. We'll talk about this first quarter moon, and it's about to get spicy, y'all. First quarter moon in Capricorn is going to be on Pluto. So let's see what we have coming in that starts here. All right, I'll see you then.